Is it wrong to want for a criminal who deserves capital punishment? Is it wrong to want mercy for a criminal who deserves capital punishment? If not, wouldn't that be the ideal attitude to have in general? It's right to love mercy. The Bible says so. Hear, O man, what does the Lord require of you but to love mercy, do justice, walk humbly with your God. And isn't it interesting that love mercy and do justice come back to back? We have a situation in the Twin Cities right now where a young man lured a girl to his house through Craigslist, ostensibly wanting her as a babysitter, and then killed her. The jury 2 days ago found him guilty of first-degree murder and manslaughter. And there's a picture of her parents on the front page of the paper. And I just, every time I see that, I wonder, what do you do? And then there was a video on a blog the other day of the wife of the pastor who was shot dead in his pulpit, extending forgiveness to the murderer who is in jail. The parents of this young woman said they were glad at the conviction. And I didn't fault them for that. That doesn't mean they want this fellow to go to hell. All things considered, they lost their daughter, and wrong was done, and sin was committed, and law was broken, and it is right in so many ways that this killer be punished. But to want mercy for him is good. But that mercy would take the form in a social setting where you don't release criminals on the world. It would take the form of wanting him to be forgiven, praying for him, perhaps even visiting him in prison and offering to forgive him. But that forgiveness does not say, I think it would be a good idea if he got let go. He will be let go in heaven. But here, society won't work. I mean, Romans 13 sets it up so that the government carries the sword to reward the good and to punish the evil, because society won't work if governments don't carry swords, prisons, fines, death penalty. So yes, it's right to want mercy for criminals, to forgive them, not to hold grudges against them, and to want them to be punished. Love justice, love mercy, do justice.
When the issue of capital punishment comes up as a policy issue, Christians weigh in on it. Many weigh in against capital punishment, and some weigh in favor of capital punishment. I actually think capital punishment is a legitimate alternative in our present system, partly because God instituted capital punishment in the Old Testament. In fact, I think there were something like 20 crimes in the theocracy that were capital crimes. That means a person who is guilty of them could be punished by death. And maybe half of them were religious crimes, or what we'd consider now to be religious crimes. Now, that doesn't mean that all the crimes that were punished in that way in the Old Testament need to be punished in that way now. I am just simply pointing out that God can't be against capital punishment per se, because He's the one who initiated it, and actually it comes before the fall. Genesis chapter 9, verse 5 or 6, what God says is that if man sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for, and here's the rationale, in the image of God, God created man. Man is an image bearer. That particular creature is so valuable in virtue of that, that if you shed his blood, you sacrifice your own as well. That's kind of the rationale. It's meant to indicate the value of human beings, and that's really the point of the Genesis 9 passage. Now, how does this apply for us today? Well, it may or may not have application. That's a little bit of a different argument. What I'm addressing now is one particular kind of pushback. And that is, well, if God justified capital punishment and thought it was okay in the Old Testament, why did he use capital punishment against Moses or against David, both who were guilty of murder? All right, Moses murdered an Egyptian. That's why he fled to the wilderness for 40 years. And David arranged for Uriah the Hittite to be murdered, the wife, or rather the husband of Bathsheba. Okay, so they're guilty. So why weren't they executed? So the argument goes. And when I think about this, I'm not sure why that is so persuasive. Just because there is a law in place that allows for capital punishment does not mean that you have to apply that law in every circumstance. After all, it's God's law, right? And these were crimes that God himself saw and God himself forgave. So isn't God in an appropriate position to forgive and extend mercy rather than have the law worked out the way it might be in other circumstances? I think the answer is yes. The real question it does not have to do with David or Moses and God's mercy. The real question is it appropriate to consider capital punishment for capital crimes in our day and age? And that's where the debate is. Regardless of what people decide about capital punishment per se, bringing up Moses and David here does not help us assess the question at all. There are exceptional cases. God can do mercy whenever he wants to do mercy with regards to his law.
I think that our work has had a profound effect on perceptions of capital punishment by everyone in the United States and, frankly, across the world. It's just extraordinary. Nobody ever believed that there was this great a risk of convicting an innocent person, much less executing them. And now the risk of wrongful conviction and execution has been established as much higher than anybody believed. And the debate now about capital punishment in the United States has changed. It's not just a moral issue for people, because reasonable people can differ as to whether the death penalty is a morally appropriate sanction for the most heinous of crimes. But nobody believes that you ought to execute an innocent person. That's a non-starter as a moral question. And now we know that that's a significant risk, so that's point one. Point two, and the National Academy of Sciences just recently produced another report on this, there's no sound proof that this deters. Capital punishment does not deter. Just take the state of California. In the state of California, it takes 26 years between a death sentence and an execution. They've had very few executions in the state. Most people die of old age in prisons. Now, how does that help family members of a murder victim who want closure, if you believe that it really does bring closure? Some do, some don't. But 26 years? If you believe it deters, although the evidence is clear it doesn't, how do you get deterrence if it takes 26 years? Even if you're one of those people that believes in retribution, it's a morally appropriate sanction, if it's not instituted for 26 years, it's not achieving anybody's purpose. And it's also incredibly expensive. So in the state of California, they estimate over the next 5 years it would cost them $1 billion to continue with the death penalty. So we now have on the ballot in the state of California a referendum to repeal capital punishment in that state. And the campaign is led by Jeannie Whitford, who was the warden at San Quentin, who presided over executions, who was once head of the Department of Corrections in the state of California. The individual who brought the referendum years ago was the sponsor of it, now says it was a terrible mistake. Capital punishment judges are saying this system is broken, you should support the referendum and repeal it. Just in the last 5 years, state after state, the state legislatures have said, look, it's not an issue of whether you think capital punishment is a morally appropriate sanction, because if you do public opinion polling, 65% of the people believe that. 35% believe it's immoral for the state to kill. But where people are coming together now is the punishment of life without the possibility of parole versus the death penalty. And then all of a sudden the public opinion polling, it's about 50-50. And then if you add in, as in California, the incredible expense of this, and you begin to realize if we put all our money into this capital punishment system that doesn't deter, that can't get things right, that has a risk of executing the innocent, and then you take that money, that criminal justice dollar, and you put it into so many of our innocence reforms, for example, that not only protect the innocent but help law enforcement catch the guilty, whether it's better forensic science or eyewitness reform or videotaping interrogations. We're safer spending that money on these other pursuits rather than on the death penalty, which is so problematic. But if that happens in California, after you have this whole trend of 5 states in 5 years, and then California, there are a number of other states that are on the verge. The governor of Oregon has said he thinks the system is broken. He won't execute anybody. So there's quite a few states that I think are in play. And if you get up to 10, 11, you can't just have the death penalty for a few states that are the ones that do the most executions. For Texas or Virginia, you just can't have it for just a few states. And I think under those circumstances, the United States Supreme Court will invalidate it under the 8th Amendment. Subscribe to Thinker.
Good evening, Pastor. We are here to ask you questions about our topic, death penalty, and we are going to ask you 3 questions regarding the matter. So, Pastor, what is your moral stand on the topic of death penalty?
Well, I believe that in the death penalty, we should not, as dictated by the Bible, we should not be taking lives in our own hands. And that it is for the Lord to decide whom He would take, or what the time that a person would be taken out of this world. Okay. So, yun yung moral stand ko. It's not for us to decide kung sinong at anong oras ka mamamatay. It is of the Lord, regardless of whatever you did dito sa mundo.
Can you see the advantage and the disadvantage of death penalty, sir, on those countries that implemented it already?
Well, actually, meron talagang advantage siya. Kung advantage lang, probably number 1 would yung fear to, yung pagtaas ng crime rate. Maaaring bababa ang crime rate natin kasi nagkakaroon ng fear dun sa mga gagawa. Pangalawa, baka ma-decongest natin yung ating mga kulungan sa sobrang dami na nakakulong. Yan siguro yung mga advantages niyan. At the same time, ang disadvantage naman yan is yung question na totoo ba talagang guilty yung tao. Knowing our justice system, kung magaling yung abogado, they could always twist the truth. Kaya hindi siya viable din sa atin. Yung disadvantage niya kasi if you're rich, you can afford the best lawyer, and if you are not rich, you cannot afford the best lawyer dito sa atin.
Follow-up question, Pastor. Should knowing the stand of your on the topic, can justice be delivered on crimes that are worthy of capital punishment if we do not implement it in the country? Can justice still be delivered?
Yes, justice can still be delivered if it's not implemented. One, if you're really guilty and you go to jail, you pay for it. Taking away the freedom of a person, that's more. It's like a long suffering for them, or more. It's like a sufficient payment that you don't have your freedom to move around. Just being in jail alone, mawawala na yung freedom mo to move around. That's justice. Now doon sa ano naman, obviously, syempre doon sa mga kamag-anak ng mga na biktima, ang mahirap naman sa kanila kasi, like tao kasi tayo, we would always want to have more. Like, kung pwede lang, we'll put justice in our hand at tayo mismo yung papatay, or we'll do the same doon sa tao na yon. Pero I think if justice for justice ang pinag-usapan natin, it is enough to put a person in jail, take away the freedom to move around, take away the privileges ng kanyang mga as a human, as a citizen of the country. I think that is justice enough, rather than putting them to sleep. Di ba? Parang mas mahaba yung kanilang, like if a sentence of a life imprisonment up to 70 years old, rather than after 3 months papatayin na siya, parang mas longer yung kanyang paghihirap.
So justice is still served.
Yes, justice is still served.
So as a pastor of a Christian church, if one of your members have been afflicted or have been in a case where they are in this situation, na sila po ay naging subject sa karumal-dumal na krimen. For example, pinatay ang kanyang mahal sa buhay or relatives, what would you advise that particular family as a pastor of Christian?
Well, I would always advise them or this particular family na let God find its way. I mean, like what I mean is, let the justice of the Lord move, because God knows what is best for you, what is best for him. When this person took away the life of the loved ones, I would always tell them, God is still in control. That God would take care of everything. And if God would put down his justice, it would be really a justice that your family is seeking.
Last question, Pastor, regarding on the implementation of death penalty in this country. Should it be implemented? Why and why not?
I think
Death penalty, and we are going to ask you 3 questions regarding the matter. So, Pastor, what is your moral stand on the topic of death penalty?
Well, I believe that in the death penalty, we should not, as dictated by the Bible, we should not be taking lives in our own hands, and that it is for the Lord to decide whom He would take, or what the time that a person would be taken out of this world. Okay. So, yun yung moral stand ko. It's not for us to decide kung sinong at anong oras ka mamamatay. It is of the Lord, regardless of whatever you did dito sa mundo.
Can you see the advantage and the disadvantage of death penalty, sir, on those countries that implemented it already?
Pero actually, meron talagang advantage siya. Kung advantage lang, probably number 1 would yung fear to, yung pagtaas ng crime rate. Maaaring bababa ang crime rate natin kasi nagkakaroon ng fear dun sa mga gagawa. Pangalawa, baka ma-decongest natin yung ating mga kulungan sa sobrang dami na nakakulong. Yan siguro yung mga advantages niyan. At the same time, ang disadvantage naman yan is yung question na totoo ba talagang guilty yung tao. Knowing our justice system, kung magaling yung abogado, they could always twist the truth. Kaya hindi siya viable din sa atin. Yung disadvantage siya kasi if you're rich, you can afford the best lawyer, and if you are not rich, you cannot afford the best lawyer dito sa atin.
Follow-up question, Pastor. Should knowing the stand of your on the topic, can justice be delivered on crimes that are worthy of capital punishment if we do not implement it in the country? Can justice still be delivered?
Yes, justice can still be delivered if it's not implemented. One, if you're really guilty and you go to jail, you pay for it. Taking away the freedom of a person, that's more parang it's like a long suffering for them, or more, it's like a sufficient payment that you don't have the freedom to move around. Just being in jail alone, mawawala na yung freedom mo to move around. That's justice. Now dun sa ano naman, obviously syempre dun sa mga kamag-anak ng mga na biktima, ang mahirap naman sa kanila kasi like tao kasi tayo we would always want to have more. Like kung pwede lang, we'll put justice in our hand at tayo mismo yung papatay, or we'll do the same dun sa tao na yon. Pero I think if justice for justice ang pinag-usapan natin, it is enough to put a person in jail, take away the freedom to move around, take away the privileges ng kanyang mga as a human, as a citizen of the country. I think that is justice enough, rather than putting them to sleep. Di ba? Parang mas mahaba yung kanilang, like if a sentence of a life imprisonment up to 70 years old, rather than after 3 months papatayin na siya, parang mas longer yung kanyang paghihirap mo.
So justice is still served.
Yes, justice is still served.
So as a pastor of a Christian church, if one of your members have been afflicted or have been in a case where they are in this situation na sila po ay naging subject sa karumal-dumal na krimen, for example, pinatay ang kanyang mahal sa buhay or relatives, what would you advise that particular family as a pastor of Christian?
Well, I would always advise them or this particular family na let God find its way. I mean, like what I mean is, let the justice of the Lord move, because God knows what is best for you, what is best for him. When this person took away the life of the loved ones, I would always tell them, God is still in control. That God would take care of everything. And if God would put down his justice, it would be really a justice that your family is seeking.
Last question, Pastor, regarding on the implementation of death penalty in this country. Should it be implemented? Why and why not?
I think God would take care of everything. And if God would put down his justice, it would be really a justice that your family is seeking.
Last question, Pastor, regarding on the implementation of death penalty in this country. Should it be implemented? Why and why not?
I think it should not be implemented, for the reason that we are not God to take away the lives of the people. Unlike God in the Bible, where we can read that God has even wiped up an entire generation for not obeying Him. But God can see the heart of the person. God can see who really is the guilty ones. We cannot do that. Like I said before, we are dependent on our court of law. And in the Philippines, it has been proven time and again, if you don't have the best lawyer, you cannot win in the case. Most likely, we would be putting to death people that are not guilty, but all their guilt is because they have no money to pay for a good lawyer. I think that would just be happening. Unlike if you are in prison for your innocence, time will come, you will be freed and you can even clear your name. But what if the sentence of death is there, and after the lethal injection, 2 months after an evidence came up, would that bring back the life of the person that you have taken? I don't think so. So I believe it should not be put into law.
So there are tendencies that innocent people will be punished.
Yes, yun yung fear. Like, I heard this saying from some law student. They would always say that it's better to to release one convicted felon than to put into jail 100 innocent people. So, how can we be sure na pwede natin 100% na ma-justify natin yung killing na yan? So, yeah. If it is really, if we can prove na siya yung gumawa, lahat, siguro I can move my, pero as a pastor, I would stand na, sana wag na lang siya manipulate.
Thank you, Pastor.
Would take care of everything. And if God would put down His justice, it would be really a justice that your family is seeking.
Last question, Pastor, regarding on the implementation of death penalty in this country. Should it be implemented? Why and why not?
I think it should not be implemented for the reason that we are not God to take away the lives of the people. Unlike God in the Bible, where we can read that God has even wiped up an entire generation for not obeying Him. But God can see the heart of the person. God can see who really is the guilty ones. We cannot do that. Like I said before, we are dependent on our court of law. And in the Philippines, it has been proven time and again, if you don't have the best lawyer, you cannot win in the case. Most likely, we would be putting to death people that are not guilty, but all their guilt is because they have no money to pay for a good lawyer. I think that would just be happening. Unlike if you are in prison for your innocence, time will come, you will be freed and you can even clear your name. But what if the sentence of death is there, and after the lethal injection, 2 months after an evidence came up, would that bring back the life of the person that you have taken? I don't think so. So I believe it should not be put into law.
So there are tendencies that innocent people will be punished.
Yes, yun yung fear. Like, I heard this saying from some law student. They would always say that it's better to to release one convicted felon than to put into jail 100 innocent people. So, how can we be sure na pwede natin 100% na ma-justify natin yung killing na yan? So, yeah. If it is really, if we can prove na siya yung gumawa, lahat, siguro I can move my, pero as a pastor, I would stand na, sana wag na lang siya manipulate.
Thank you, Pastor, sa inyo pong
Good morning, everyone. This is Ed. I'm going to give my reflection on the topic at hand, which is death penalty. Whether or not is it moral? What are the disadvantages and the advantages? And should it be implemented in our country, in the Philippines? I firmly believe that the morality in this topic is not for me to determine. It is not for everyone to determine, because morality for me is not subjective. So I'm going to the roots of my faith. I believe that it is moral because my faith, I'm a Christian, and in the Bible it is moral. From the Old Testament and the New Testament, there are crimes that are worthy of capital punishment, and it is executed by capital punishment. There are crimes that are not worthy of capital punishment, therefore it is not punishable by capital punishment. In the New Testament, in Romans chapter 13, St. Paul stated the importance of using the sword when it comes to the authorities or the government. Its importance when it comes to upholding good and punishing evil. So authorities should uphold the good and punish evil. So even in the Old Testament and the New Testament, the law of Moses and our Lord God Himself, who has established this rule of law, views it as moral to dispense justice. And that is the issue in this topic. I am not here to enlighten everyone that it will that penalty will eventually give deterrence to crime. No, it is never that issue. Deterrence of crime is never the issue when it comes to death penalty. The issue is justice, whether or not it is dispensed or it is delivered, or in the disadvantage, is it used for social injustice. So I believe it is moral because it is not based on my emotions. It is not based on my it is not based on my personal experience. I think that it is moral because my faith dictates it so, and God declares it as moral. The disadvantage of it, though, it can be also used for immoral reasons. We have the issue of innocent men being killed because of the improper or inefficient way of dispensing justice when it comes to capital punishment. That is one of the most or the biggest mistake that you could ever do when it comes to implementing this law or this punishment. I believe that when we implement death penalty, it can be abused or it can be used for justice. Those are the disadvantage and the advantage of the matter. So going on to the last reality that we are facing right now as a Filipino society, as one Filipino society, is should it be implemented in the Philippines? I think not. I firmly believe that it should not be implemented in the Philippines now. The amount of injustice and the amount of corruption that the powerful people enjoy is not the right home or the right place in which we should implement death penalty. The agent that is the main focus of this case is the justice system. We should fix first the justice system before we implement this instrument of justice. Because if we fail to do so, it can be, if implemented, it can be used for injustices. So overall, in my reflection, I still believe that death penalty is moral, but it should not be implemented yet here in the Philippines. We should fix first the justice system in order before we implement it, and so that we can assure ourselves and the Filipino society that justice can indeed be served as we implement the sword that is mainly used for justice on capital punishment, or capital crimes that is being rampant here in the